44% of people return to a toxic relationship at least once, not because they don't know it's toxic, but because something deeper, something invisible is pulling them back. You block them, you move on, you start to heal, and then just when the silence begins to feel like peace, they come back. The narcissist doesn't return because they love you. They return because they know exactly which part of you still hopes. Psychologists call it intermittent reinforcement, the same mechanism that fuels gambling addiction. One moment they love you, the next they vanish. That emotional chaos creates a chemical bond so strong it feels like love, but it's not. And the worst part? Your brain gets addicted to the confusion. If you've ever felt that storm inside you when your heart says no, but your mind still waits for their message. If you've ever wondered, why do I still feel tied to someone who broke me? This video is for you. If you're in this situation, or if you've lived through it, leave a like. You can share your story in the comments, or just write thank you to say you're still standing. Because what you're about to hear might finally give you the clarity they never wanted you to have. Why do they always come back? Before we dive into your story, your pain, your questions, pause and consider this. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." What if this wasn't fate? What if the narcissist's return isn't just about them, but about what keeps happening inside you? Mark, Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, faced betrayal and manipulation at court, yet he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He didn't have Instagram, no text messages at 2 a.m., but he did understand cycles, repetition, and how toxic personalities return because we leave the door mentally or emotionally slightly open. Science supports this. A 2020 study published in the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships showed that 44% of people return to toxic relationships at least once. 44%. That means nearly half of those who manage to escape go back hoping something might change, but it doesn't. Why? Let's break this with truth, not fantasy. According to neuroscientist Dr. Helen Fisher, when we re-in-love, especially in trauma-bonded relationships, the brain lights up in the same areas as it does with cocaine use. The dopamine rush from a toxic relationship, especially when coupled with intermittent reinforcement love, then withdrawal, then love again, creates a chemical loop that's almost impossible to break without awareness. It's not just emotional, it's neurological. Freud believed repetition, compulsion, this unconscious drive to repeat painful patterns, comes from the psyche trying to resolve something unresolved. That's why even when you know it's toxic, even when they've lied, cheated, humiliated you, a part of you still waits for the nice version to come back. The version they showed at the start. But here's the trap. That version never really existed. It was a mask. And the return of the narcissist is the return of the illusion. But how does that illusion grip so tightly? Because the narcissist doesn't return randomly. They return strategically when you're weak, doubting, alone, healing, or even happy. It is called a hoovering phaser, term used in psychology to describe how narcissists suck their victims back in. And the scariest part, it works often, not because you're naive, but because your brain is wired to seek patterns, resolution, and hope. Seneca warned us long ago, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. You imagine maybe this time will be different, maybe the words are sincere, maybe the change is real, but reality, the narcissist isn't coming back because they miss you. They're coming back because they miss control. A study by the University of Kansas found that narcissistic individuals are significantly more likely to attempt reconnection with ex-partners not due to love but to maintain power, status, or access. These are cold, calculated returns disguised in warmth. So when your phone buzzes at night and you feel your heart leap, remember what you feel is not love, it's conditioning. But the Stoics knew how to break the loop, not by resisting the return, but by understanding the nature of it. Epictetus wrote, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." The narcissist's return, out of your control. Your response, entirely yours. And that's where the shift begins. Understanding this isn't just knowledge, it's armor. Because once you know the science, the history, the patterns, you stop asking, why did they come back? And start asking, why did I let them? This isn't a story about weakness, it's a story about clarity. And you're not just watching to feel better. You're watching to understand, see clearly, to finally put a name on what has haunted your peace. This is only the beginning, because once we see the cycle, the next step is understanding why you still feel attached even when your logic is screaming at you to let go. Let's go there. You blocked them, then you unblocked them. You swore it was over, but then you checked their profile at 2 a.m. Who hurt you so deeply, still have such a strong grip on your mind, your emotions, your nervous system. This isn't just you. You're not weak. You're not irrational. You're human with a brain designed to survive, not to be free. Let's break this down. When you're in a toxic dynamic, your brain doesn't just store memories, it encodes them with emotion. Neuropsychologist Dr. Daniel Goleman explains how emotional experiences, especially painful or chaotic ones, form deep grooves in the brain. Every moment of charm, followed by a slap of silence. Every I love you paired with these become emotional loops, and your mind, like a scratched vinyl record, starts playing the same track over and over. But there's more. It's not just your mind, it's your body. Trauma lives in the nervous system. According to Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, author of The Body Keeps the Score, trauma isn't just remembered, so when the narcissist returns, your body feels a strange sense of familiarity, and that can feel like love, but it's not. Then comes the chemical addiction. Every time the narcissist gives you affection or attention, your brain releases dopamine, the reward chemical. But because it's not consistent, you never know when it will happen. This is called intermittent reinforcement, the same system used in gambling addictions. Your brain becomes wired to crave the next hit of affection, no matter how rare or toxic it is. It's a trap with golden chains. Sigmund Freud believed this phenomenon is rooted in what he called repetition. Compulsion, a drive to return to painful experiences in an unconscious attempt to master or resolve them. In other words, your psyche might be trying to rewrite a chapter it never got to finish. You're not just craving them, you're craving closure. But narcissists never offer closure. They offer confusion dressed in charm, and charm is the most dangerous weapon they carry. Psychologist Dr. Ramani de Vasula, one of the leading experts on narcissistic abuse, says it clearly. Narcissists don't love you. They love how they feel when they're controlling you. They don't come back because they've changed. They come back because they know you haven't fully detached. Mark reminds us, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. If your thoughts are still painted with their words, their promises, their eyes, you'll continue to feel bonded to someone who once mirrored your light, only to feed off it. Now ask yourself, when they return, do you feel peace, or do you feel anxious, alive, confused? That's not love. That's a nervous system in overdrive. That's trauma masquerading as longing. And here's the most dangerous part. You think you're the only one, but you're not. Studies show that victims of narcissistic abuse take, on average, 7 attempts to leave for good, because these hooks are not physical, psychological, spiritual, chemical, invisible to the eye, but heavy on the soul. Seneca said, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality." And that's the second trap, memory distortion. You remember the good moments, the beginning, the laughs, the connection, but you forget the silent treatments, the gaslighting, the hollow apologies. This is not your fault, but it is your responsibility now. The hooks are real. They're built with emotion, chemistry, unresolved wounds, and brilliant manipulation. But once you see them, you can start to untangle them. You stop calling it destiny and start calling it conditioning. So if your mind still races at the thought of them, if your chest tightens when you see their name, if part of you still hopes they mean it, this time breathe. You're not broken. You're rewiring. In the next part, we reveal what lies behind the mask, why they come back, and what they're really after. Let's expose the illusion. They say they miss you, that they've changed, that they finally understand what you meant. But beneath the words, beneath the charming smile, beneath the perfectly timed message is theirs, something else, something colder, something calculating. Let's be clear, narcissists don't come back out of love, they come back for supply. Carl Jung warned us long ago, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. The narcissist's return isn't about facing you, it's about avoiding themselves. You were a mirror once reflecting the version of them they liked. And when you stopped reflecting it, when you saw behind the mask, vanished. Not because they were hurt, but because they were exposed. But now they're back. Freud called this behavior a narcissistic injury, a wound to the fragile ego. You leaving, that wasn't just abandonment to them, it was humiliation. Their control was cracked, and the only way to repair that ego is to win you back, not to cherish you, not to rebuild, but to prove they still have power over your mind. That's the game. Dr. George Simon, expert on manipulative personalities, explains this clearly. Narcissists are not confused, they're not unaware. They know what they're doing and they return when they sense your boundaries are soft again, when your defenses are down, when the silence has created doubt or loneliness, or that whisper of nostalgia that says, maybe I was too harsh. They exploit that moment, every time. And here's the twist, they often don't want to stay, they want to be let back in. Once they're back in, they usually sabotage the connection again. Why? Because it's not about the relationship. It's about control. Dr. Karel McBride, who studied thousands of survivors of narcissistic abuse, found that many narcissists re-enter only to re-abandon. It's a loop. The return isn't about rebuilding, it's a performance, a hunt. Once the prey stops running, they lose interest. It's a disturbing truth, but it's liberating once you understand it, because you stop personalizing it. Mark wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to think, to enjoy, to love. But you can't do any of those things when you're constantly bracing for someone's return or their next disappearance." The narcissist doesn't want your love. They want your attention, your confusion, your reactions, because those are proof that they still matter, that you still orbit around them. Neuroscience gives us another angle. The prefrontal cortex, the rational part of your brain, wants to move on, but the amygdala, for emotional fear-based center, remembers the highs and lows. It confuses danger with passion. You feel a rush when they text, but it's not excitement. It's hype. Your body remembers the chaos as intensity, even chemistry. And that's how they stay in control. Not through love, but through emotional instability. And when they sense you've moved on, that's when they have to return, because your healing threatens their illusion. If you're okay without them, what does that say about them? To a narcissist, your indifference is an insult. Your peace is a rejection of their power. That's why the return often isn't soft, it's aggressive, sudden, overwhelming. They'll say anything, do anything, love bomb, apologize, pretend, until they're back at the center of your mind. But Stoicism gives you the antidote. Seneca wrote, "He's most powerful who has power over himself." You don't defeat the narcissist by arguing, or exposing, or making them understand. You win by no longer playing, by not responding, by holding your silence like a sword. Because silence is power and they hate losing power. They never wanted your soul, just your reaction. They don't miss the real you, they miss the version of you they could manipulate. In the next part, we'll shift the focus from them to you, because the real battle is not why they come back, but why you still feel stuck. Now, we begin the journey inward. You know they're toxic. You know they lie, manipulate, disappear when it suits them, and return like nothing happened. And still you wait. You hesitate. You wonder, what if they really changed this time? This is the paradox of emotional dependence, and it doesn't begin with them. It begins with you, with something inside you that feels like home in the chaos, something that was trained not by love but by lack. Carl Jung said, "People don't have ideas. Ideas have people." In trauma, it's not just memories that shape you, it's ideas about yourself, about love, about worth. Somewhere deep in your system, there may be a belief that says, if I can make this person love me, I'll finally be enough. But you were already enough. You just gave your worth to someone who sold it back to you in pieces. This is why Stoicism matters, because Stoic philosophy isn't about suppressing emotion, it's about mastering the source of your reactions. Epictetus, born a slave and later one of the greatest minds of Stoic thought, said, "It is not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them." So let's reframe the judgment. When they ghost you, it's not abandonment, it's data. When they return, it's not love, it's a test. And when you feel stuck, it's not weakness, it's the echo of old conditioning. Your nervous system hasn't caught up to your wisdom yet, but it will. Neuroscience confirms what the Stoics already taught. Dr. Joe Dispenza, in his research on neuroplasticity, shows how emotional patterns literally carve paths in the brain like rivers through soil. If you grew up surrounded by unstable love, your brain will instinctively attach to intensity. You equate unpredictability with passion. You feel numb in peace. That's not love. That's survival mode. But survival mode is not your destiny. Seneca wrote, "You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire. You fear loneliness as if it will kill you. You crave love as if it must be earned through suffering." But the Stoics remind us peace is found not in controlling others, but in mastering what we attach our meaning to. So what are you really attached to? The person or the hope? The fantasy of what they could be, or the fear of what it means to truly let go? Because sometimes letting go feels like dying, not because you're losing them, but because you're losing the version of yourself that was still chasing their love. Emotional dependence isn't just about the narcissist. It's about a gap inside you that you've tried to fill with validation, attention, chaos. It's not weakness, it's a wound, and wounds need awareness before they can heal. Dr. Nicole, holistic psychologist and trauma expert, writes, "Our emotional addictions are the result of childhood. Patterns that taught us safety was found in people who weren't always safe. That's why you stay. Not because you're blind, but because your inner compass still points to survival, not freedom. But now you're waking up. You're seeing the cycle. You're asking better questions. You're breaking the loop by learning something they never expected you to learn. And here's the hard truth. They didn't change. But you can. You are no longer the person who needs their approval to breathe. You are no longer the version of you who mistakes silence for peace. And you are no longer willing to be the emotional sponge for someone else's emptiness." The Stoic path isn't loud. It's steady. It doesn't beg for closure. It becomes the closure. That's why emotional dependence ends not when they stop returning, but when you stop responding. In the next part, we move forward into strategies, into clarity, into the science and Stoic practice of becoming emotionally immune. It's not about fighting harder. It's about needing less. Now we talk about freedom. They come back. And this time, you don't flinch. Not because it doesn't hurt, but because you finally understand. You don't owe your peace to their presence or their absence. You owe it to your own awareness. This is where the healing shifts from emotional to existential. You're not just surviving anymore. You're transforming. Dr. Bruce Lipton, a pioneer in epigenetics, says it clearly. When you change your perception, you change your biology. And that's exactly what's happening when you stop reacting to a narcissist. Your brain stops producing the same cortisol storms. Your body exits the trauma loop. You begin to regulate your nervous system not around them, but around you. But that doesn't happen overnight. It's not a moment, it's a rewiring. The Stoics understood this before psychology gave it a name. Epictetus taught, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. In other words, stop trying to prove your side. Stop explaining. Stop chasing justice from someone who thrives in distortion. Your silence becomes your sword. And neuroscience agrees. According to Dr. Judson Brewer, a neuroscientist specializing in habit change, the key to breaking toxic emotional loops lies in disrupting the reward system. You must make the old response boring, predictable, unrewarding. That's how your brain begins to let go. Not through force, through neutrality. So what does immunity look like? It starts with boundaries, not walls. Boundaries are not about keeping people out. They're about keeping yourself respected. A boundary isn't "don't contact me." It's "if you do, I will not respond." It's quiet, but firm. A boundary doesn't scream. It disappears from the battlefield. Then comes the detox: emotional, digital, mental. No checking their stories. No analyzing old texts. No rereading their apologies like sacred scripts. You are not starved. You are healing, and every time you resist the urge to your power grows. Mark wrote in his meditations, "Choose not to be harmed and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed and you haven't been." This isn't denial, it's redirection. Instead of asking, "Why did they hurt me?" ask, "Why did I give them the authority to define me?" And finally, immunity means becoming emotionally and not just avoiding pain but becoming stronger through it. When a narcissist returns and you feel the old reaction, breathe, observe. This is your moment of training. The discomfort isn't a setback. It's your system unlearning addiction. As Dr. Gabor says, the question is not why the addiction, but why the pain. Breaking the cycle means confronting the original wound not with judgment, but with truth. You will not by proving anything to them, but by realizing you don't have to. The Stoic doesn't seek revenge. He seeks release. You no longer need to teach them a lesson. You're too focused teaching yourself peace. And that's how immunity works, not as a shield but as clarity. You no longer respond from fear, craving, or hope. You respond or don't from choice, thus power. In the final part, we'll go deeper, because it's not about them leaving your life. It's about you finally understanding why they no longer matter. We don't need their apology to be free. We just need one decision: silence. You thought it would end when they left, that the silence would bring peace, that without their chaos, your heart would calm down. But the truth is, silence isn't the end. It's the beginning, because they may be gone, but the war is still inside. That's the final test, the echo of them. They return in your thoughts, your dreams, the way your body tightens when your phone vibrates. It's not about them anymore. It's about the part of you that learned to live in hypervigilance. That's why freedom isn't in their absence. It's in your non-reaction. Not reacting is not about coldness. It's about reclaiming your nervous system, your breath, your inner stillness. As Epictetus said, there is only one way to happiness, and that is to cease worrying about things which are beyond the power of our will. You can't stop them from thinking of you. You can't stop them from returning. But you can stop giving them access to your peace. And that ... is the definition of power. Neuroscience backs it up. Dr. Andrew Huberman explains how emotional mastery is about regulation, training the body to return to calm faster after stress. And what triggers more stress than a narcissist's unexpected re-entry into your life? But here's the key. When you expect a return, not emotionally but intellectually, are no longer surprised, you'd become neutral, and neutrality kills manipulation. This is why Stoic wisdom still works today. Marcus Aurelius faced war, betrayal, loss, and still wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. That is your final shift. You stop asking, when will they stop coming back? And instead you say, it doesn't matter. I won't be pulled in again. You become unavailable to manipulation. Not bitter, not angry, just clear, calm, focused. You are no longer in orbit around them. They've become irrelevant. And in that moment, a strange thing happens. They feel it. Narcissists are like emotional bloodhounds. They sensed when they've lost control, when their name no longer causes a reaction in your chest, when your silence isn't punishment but indifference. That's what they can't stand. Not your anger, not your closure letter, but your peace. Dr. Ramani often says, the best revenge against a narcissist is a life so quiet, so centered, that they don't even know if they still exist to you, because they feed off attention. When you stop feeding them even mentally, they starve and they disappear. Not reacting is a superpower, but it's also a practice. There will be days when the old wounds itch, when you feel like reaching out, when you fantasize about them regretting everything. That's normal. That's healing. But healing doesn't mean you never feel. It means you stop responding from that feeling. The pain fades when you stop feeding it. And here's the beauty. You're not just surviving the narcissist. You're becoming someone they can't reach anymore. Not because you're hidden, but because you've elevated. You've changed the frequency. They come back ... and you no longer answer. Not out of spite, but because you're not there anymore. The version of you they once knew, the one who over-explained, who waited, who hoped is gone. What remains is someone stoic, solid, unshakable, and finally free. And that ... is the real ending.